So I want to shift the conversation over to the man, or from a black male perspective. I know we don't have any men on the panel talking with us right now, but I think that we are qualified as mothers, wives, grandmothers to comment on this area. And I just want to give you some feedback that I've had from men in the UK and the US as well. They said, I've often heard the saying, or one specific feedback was, I've often heard the saying, you must do the work as it pertains to healing and that sort of introspection piece. And I did not know what that work was. I now understand a little deeper about the work on a deeper level. I understand it. And I thought what was also quite interesting is that I had men speaking to me saying, I actually went through this, successful men. And one in particular said, I have a lot in common regarding this story. Myself and my other two sisters in the late 50s were fostered out. This allowed our parents to go off to study towards their professions. It was the done thing by Nigerians around that time frame, but it deeply resonated with me because it brought up some of the trauma from my own journey. From another man in the UK, this is powerful, powerful stuff. The next level of how we need to be having conversations. We've grown, and you are now leading that charge. This is digestible for everyone, which means we can all, and I mean everyone in bold, race, color, gender, religion. This conversation transcends that. And as to the professor, as the professor said, and I agree with too, this has many parts. The conversations are so much bigger. So I think that leads me into the topic around the man, and in particular, coming from a Caribbean background, Jamaica. In fact, I was born in Jamaica. I say we are post Windrush, double post Windrush generation, because my parents didn't come here as part of the Windrush, but they came on that on that story, on that trajectory. I would say my father was actually fleeing the political turmoil that was going on in Jamaica at the time, because he was considered a leader in his community, and Siaga wanted to recruit him as one of his community leaders. And my father didn't want that, so he decided to move the family away, and obviously we ended up in England. But I wanted to address this notion, and I'm going to sit back and allow the Spirit to lead me in how I deliver this piece around the practice of Caribbean men, and I would say African American men too, and the multiple mother syndrome, creating that term baby mother and baby father. I read recently, and I'm not going to mention names now. I promised I wouldn't mention this bit, but I think I have to because I'm led there. That one particular Jamaican artist has 48 children, which we need to address this. We need to address this in our community of our men, and that behavior of having multiple partners is a direct debris of what you incurred in slavery. It has nothing to do with the connection in the Bible that everyone always quotes me, where the Bible says, for God 4 times multiply. Well, it actually didn't mean that. That's not what it means. So this epidemic that is consistent now in our communities, in our families, of the multiple baby mother without Sankofa syndrome. Can we speak on this, Professor, before I go to Abby?
Well, yeah, I mean,
I hope I framed it in a comfortable way for everyone. But I know what I want to say, but I'm not.
I
I
think
don't
I
think I can
understand
say
where
it
you're
on this
going,
platform.
where you're
Yeah.
basically going, which is this is reprehensible, basically, is what is being said here. But I think, it's important to understand that this is a practice that is left over from the slave mode of production. African men were used as stunts. Their role was to go and to stud the women for the purpose of producing what are called, uh, uh, well, they were the babies were called pickaninnies or what have you, and the mothers were called wenches. Okay. So we were producing babies to work on the various plantations. So you would go, I mean, the practice was so horrendous, especially in the United States, where they had stud farms following the end of the official end of slavery, the transportation of humans through the Middle Passage. The men were made to stud their own mothers, hence the horrific term motherfucker. That's where that comes from, and we live with that. And but if we don't know that history and have enough sense of dignity in self, we say that and we repeat that and we say that to each other. As mothers who bring forth these young men into the world, I think it is important and critical the way that we teach them and that we train them, especially being conscious of this truth that there are men who are absent from the homes. And those men are not absent by accident. This is something that's been allowed. We have intentionally allowed it to continue. We've allowed it to continue as mothers because one, we've gone to war with whomever the father happens to be. So that person is not around. So the boys are not exposed to other men in the environment. And so they simply follow what they see. And what they see, generally speaking, are men who engage in this business of studying women. So we've ended up with this term baby mother. That's my baby mother and my baby father. So the idea that you could have 6 or 7 women in one community with one baby father, and then the wives. Certainly, that's how I experience it here in the United States. The young women are quarreling with each other and speaking badly to each other on Facebook and so on and so forth. Well, the only way this stops is when we stop it.
Thank
We
you.
have to stop it and call it what it is. Say it for what it is. Tell our young women, tell our young men, because unless we do that at the level of our families and within our local communities, this will not stop. This is a strong sense of self hatred. It's a lack of dignity, and it's a lack of understanding of your own history, and it's a lack of understanding of how you have been denigrated, abused, and trained and treated to be nothing but an object. An object. And so there's no glory in any of that. There's no glory in that because you can't raise a family, not even an extended family, when in fact you don't have proper relationships, proper adult relationships, adult mature relationships, because that is what is missing. And, in the last session, we talked about epigenetics. Well, our men also experience that epigenetic trauma. And so it is compounded by the behavior that they now engage in with this, not having any control over themselves, not being centered, and believing that their manhood is wrapped up in their maleness, right? So it's how many children I have with how many women I can stud will determine how strong a man that I am. We have to call that and stop that. And that requires women being very, 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 very disciplined. And that is why I think it's important that we as women do have the conversation because we control that. We control that based on our receiving those men or setting a standard that allowing them to understand that their behavior will not be tolerated. And because their behavior is tolerated by us as women, it is perpetuated. It continues.
I really understand what you're saying, and I think women, as you say, need to be accountable for the men that they are prepared to allow into their lives, knowing that they're coming from a history of having a number of enough baby mother. I'm going to say it in that stage, in that frame, because everybody can understand it. It's degrading. And, where does, I mean, thinking of Caribbean men, and I'm not talking about young men, I'm talking about big men, right, are still practicing, are still on this as if it's a badge of honor. And I'm saying, as a mum and an elder in my community, it is not acceptable on any level. And we need to start to look into these behaviors more so, as Professor is saying, to understand that it is not an honor. This leads me to yourself, Abby, as Nigerian by descent, by birth. And we were talking in the break about the other side of polygamy, if you want to give it a name. But this, what we're talking about in our communities, from a perspective, is not polygamy. It's trauma. But just give us an example of a controlled polygamous situation.
So in Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia, many, I'm talking about West Africa, but many African countries have always had a polygamist system in place. Now, what I will say is now there are many people that are going to church. So therefore, for some particular Africans, that's frowned upon because it goes against the original grain. But the way that it was set up from an economical standpoint, in terms of if you as the man were going to marry more than one wife, you absolutely had to have the means in place to marry more than one wife. You had to have the means in place to ensure that all of the children, all of the offspring that you had were cared for, were catered for. You couldn't just decide to do it on a whim. You know, these were big decisions and continue to be big decisions today. And so, yes, you may well have an African man who has 5 or 6 wives, who may even have 35 children, plus some. However, the difference is it's compound living, it's village living. Every wife has her place. The first wife will be, let's say, like the head wife. But there is also an understanding, and this is from somebody that I've spoken to who was in a polygamous marriage. And her understanding was very much along the lines of, I knew when I had got past my childbearing years, I couldn't do that anymore. So there was always this understanding that there would be a second or a third wife that may come in to continue the family lineage, to continue that. And so they have their particular systems in place that works. And I think I'm going to pick up on something else that we kind of said during the break, that you raised a really valid point. We are women, we are human, we are emotional beings. And so even within those constructs, within those, you are going to get jealousy, you are going to get emotion, you are going to get the insecurity of maybe when that woman reaches 50 or 55 and a 22-year-old comes into the fold of the home, there's absolutely going to be those emotions that need to be dealt with. And this isn't recent, this goes back hundreds of years. However, we find a way in that you may, as an elder woman in a polygamous relationship, you will have people around your age. So normally, I guess before birth certificates, African women would have groups of 5 years. So there'd be 5 years difference between you, and you would group together. And within that 5 years, you'd have your circle, you'd have your discussions, you'd have, whatever was going on within your community or within the one next to you. So you've always got somebody to talk to. But it did not interfere with the construct of that polygamist community and structure that you were in, because you understood that there was an economic power to this, a spiritual power to this, and the physical looking after of that whole family.
Absolutely. And I think also what is important and significant here is that we must bear in mind the fact that the continent itself was disrupted. The culture of the continent was disrupted. We have a continent now made up of 54, 55 countries. That was not the case before right? No. Before the Berlin Conference.
Yeah.
And so Africans moved from the north to the south to the north, west, east, and all over.
No borders.
No,
Beyond
right.
borders.
But and the systems that were in place, and there are countries now on the continent where people are beginning to talk about setting up political systems that are more in line with African cultural reality,
Yes.
African cultural truth, versus the parliamentary system, which doesn't work, has not worked, will not
No,
work.
it doesn't. Yeah,
Right?
Mm.
yeah,
And so,
Mm-hmm.
not to divert from our conversation about our men, because I think it is an important and critical piece of the dynamic as we talk about healing. There are men in my community that I live in here, that are doing a lot of work around men. So
Yeah.
we have, the father, the parent tree or the fatherhood tree, or various organizations where older men have come together to work with young boys. And we
Mm.
need to
Mm-hmm.
see more of that. We absolutely need to see more of that. But I think the greatest power around dealing with our men has got to be the role of the mothers, the role that we play as mothers, what we say to our boys, how we set them up, if you will, for the world, and how
Mm.
we expose them and the men that we expose them to. Because we are important and significant in that way, as well as how we receive men in our own lives. We have got to be
Yeah.
disciplined,
Yeah.
extremely disciplined. We have got to not just be driven by our emotions, as you quite rightly point out. We're women, so we're emotional, but we have to have standards by which
Mm.
we live our lives. We have to tell our girls that they have to have standards by which they live their lives, because unless we do this, there won't be a turn. It won't be a
Yeah.
turn in what we're experiencing right now. The notion that somehow, we can just again have these children and end up with these baby daddies and baby mamas and families that don't look like families. We just look like people existing,
Mm.
right? No system in place that makes any sense to anybody except we think it makes sense to us, those of us who are in the middle of it.
So how do we reach those? I mean, I think the younger generation are easier to mentor in this respect.
Yeah.
They are,
But
and
I'm
I think the
talking
older
about the kind of
generation are lost. They're
yeah, I'm
lost.
talking about because we're in this generation. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I've got a good relationship with my son and my daughter in terms of how they they've been reared or brought up to understand and respect themselves, respect their culture, and they have been fed a lot of their history
Yeah.
so they can make decisions to change the course. Even from the epigenetic perspective, both of my children, they've gone to past life regression therapy, so they can understand a little bit about our journey. So they've been exposed to things that perhaps is not tradition in our community, but it's my job to bring them into the the open space, and to understand their reason, their existence for being here, and also what their road is going forward. My daughter's currently in the Gambia, living in
Mm-hmm.
with a Muslim family where there
Mm-hmm.
are two wives. One lives in another compound, and
Mm-hmm.
the other lives there. And so it's not for me to expose what's going on, but she's experiencing that,
Yeah.
and it's a very good grounding, I think, for her to see how
Mm-hmm.
somebody else lives, or another culture live, a culture akin to her own
Yeah.
history, as it were. But how do we reach those men uh, just on the tip of the baby booming demographic? Um, and just, is it generation of the 30-year-olds, what they call millennials?
Millennials.
Millennials.
Millennials, and then there's the
Yes.
other one,
And
Gen
then just
Zs.
Jay Z's.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So
Generation
those that
Z's.
structure. It's
Men
they're
who
the ones that
themselves,
they're the ones that I'm worried about,
I
to
hear
be
you, but
honest.
men who themselves have gone through or are going through the healing process have got
Yes.
to be the ones to corral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because yes.
Yeah, they've got to be the one to corral them and to do that work.
Yes. But it's about, because if we're talking about electromagnetic frequency,
Uh-huh.
they are connected to those 50,000 children that they have
Absolutely.
by frequency.
Uh-huh.
Yep,
No separation.
And there's no separation in the
yep.
spiritual realm. So I'm trying to address the importance to our men that this behavior is spiritually taking us off balance.
Yep.
Yeah.
And even though you might be there or you might not be there to look after these children, but the fact that this trauma existed because those children were conceived from desire, from lust, rather than structure.
Right.
Yes.
Marriage,
Yeah.
and we're not talking about the white dress in the church. Marriage was a spiritual agreement.
Yeah.
It was a divine union.
It was a divine union. So
Yeah.
these connections, these children that have been mothered and fathered in these non-divine unions, there's an electromagnetic connection here, and it's traumatic.
Yes.
And you spoke about in recent broadcasts, Professor, about young men now turning on their mothers and killing them
Yes.
because of this trauma.
Yes.
You see it in the
That's
Caribbean.
happening here in the
You see
United
it in the
States.
UK. Yeah.
That's happening here.
So
Young boys, teenage boys, they're turning on their mothers and they're blaming
Yeah.
them for their situation, if you will,
yeah,
their
yeah,
condition, and
yeah,
they kept them from their fathers. They're not sure why the fathers are in jail. The mothers have taken the fathers into the criminal justice system and into
Yeah.
the legal system, putting them on child support. And the laws are such that if you don't pay the money, you get locked up. And so
Yeah.
the boys are now very, very angry, you know, with because they become teenagers. They want their fathers. They want their fathers. You know, they're not around, or the mothers are at war with the father, you
Or,
know,
or at war with the other baby mother.
or the other baby mother.
Third baby mother.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's
Right.
war.
There's war. So,
And chaos.
So there's chaos as a theme.
Absolute chaos.
And so what starts to happen is that in order to win, the mothers, maybe the fathers, turn to spiritual practices that are quite dark to gain an upmanship,
An upmanship.
or power to be the one. And what they're not realizing is that this is coming on, it's going to follow their generation.
Absolutely.
It becomes generational now when you trap a man and you hold a man by spiritual means. It means your children are going to go through the same
yes.
repercussions. And
Yes.
it's just a mess. How do we get these real deep spiritual topics to our people?
Well, we're doing
So-
partially now. We're having
That's
a
what I was going to say.
conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, go
Thank
ahead.
Thank
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
we're having the conversation.
Yes.
We're talking
But
about it.
how do they find the way to healing, to understanding this? Is it the past life regression? Is it
I
the
think
meditation? Is it the
think it's-
talking therapy?
I think it really depends on the energy of the man
Yeah.
and what
And the
feels
woman.
And the woman, but we're talking about men here in
but
particular.
absolutely, yeah.
And what feels most aligned to him, because he might not be a talker, but he might be a writer.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, he might not be a writer, but he might be a musician.
Right.
And the way that he heals is through his music. And we know that there is a healing frequency in the music,
Yes.
in the vocalizing of music, which is really powerful for us as a people. And so these are kind of things that we can naturally encourage. This is not hard work for a lot of our men because they live from a place of musicality.
Right.
Love that.
And I'm just thinking that if you know, the lyrics might not be the lyrics that they're listening to, but if there's a way through spoken word or poetry or flow that they can kind of bring the vulnerability of what they're now feeling to the world and still feel safe within that, then those kind of messages permeate out to our young men and our boys, because the music is the link. It doesn't matter. You know, whilst I'm Nigerian, in terms of born, you know, my introduction to music was Caribbean, it was reggae, it was Studio One, and this music spoke to my heart back then because it was raw.
Yeah.
And so when we get to the rawness of the music, that transcends generations.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
my children, your children, they love our music, but they're a quarter of my age, but they love the music. So I think that there is something really powerfully global about the rhythm of the music, the sound of the drum. It's a
I would
raw,
agree. I would absolutely agree with you.
heart-held,
I love this.
My
like
son.
I call it a healing heart circle,
Yeah.
because we are healing our hearts in the circular. You know, the rhythm of the drum is the rhythm of the heart.
Heart.
That's right.
Heart. My
So we are
son
bringing
at
it back to our raw roots.
age, I think 7, was put with older men to drum. He loves drumming. So he was sent with older men and became
Yeah.
part of a drumming circle. And that's how he learned to drum. And in fact, I had his djembe made in Ghana and brought it back here for him. And
Yeah.
now
It's
I
phenomenal.
watch him using the drum with his own daughter,
Yeah.
and he absolutely loves the drum and what that does for him, you know. So
How amazing
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I
is
think
this
you're right.
conversation? And I feel like licking wood. Look, I'm licking wood. Let's lick wood right now, because what you're saying about music being it's one of the most highest vibrational
Yeah,
frequencies on the planet.
yeah.
100%.
Hence why the music industry has been taken over by certain entities.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned about
Mm-hmm.
reggae music, and I've done many programs on this. That reggae is a gift from the ancestors,
Yeah.
which is now the conscious side of reggae has been
Corrupt.
cornered
Yeah.
and somewhat corrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And what I hear coming out of the youth of Jamaica, I'm speechless. Okay. And people say, oh, it's just evolving. No, you have a responsibility to maintain that tradition in the light that it was given to you
And the integrity.
and the integrity that it was given to you.
Yeah.
So I don't know what, I mean, I don't know about your dancehall lyrics and whatever it is I hear, but it is shocking. And it is what it's doing. It's actually bringing you into a negative loop of death and degradation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you might earn some money from it, but let's have a look at how many of you that have earned money from this type of music that can pass this on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation.
You're
You
not.
end up losing it. So I'm addressing dancehall, and I'm also addressing the DJs who have a responsibility to ensure that you're not playing what's going to make people listen. You're playing what is right. It's the right thing to do to uplift your generation, not because it's on trend.
Our
And
level of consciousness.
uplift our level of consciousness, because that's the intention of music in the first place.
Yes.
Hence why it's been
Yes.
captured into the negative realm.
Mm-hmm.
And that drumming frequency, which is paramount in reggae, being the vibration of the heart and told to tell stories. The drum was used in Caribbean with the first slaves to arrange revolts for your freedom. But now you're using it to talk about how many girls you can dagger and dig up
Trap yourself.
and how many
Trap
pum
yourself.
pum. I mean, I'm going to say it because I'm speechless, and there's no one, not even the elders I'm going to speak about reggae and rap communities, can say this is not the way forward, because you're all chasing a currency that you don't even own.
And that serves to perpetuate
Yes.
what we were talking about earlier around the baby mamas and the children all over the place. It's a loop. It becomes
It's a loop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it
it's a
has
loop.
to be
It's
broken.
Yeah.
It has to be broken, and you break it by talking about it, by exposing it, and by promoting those in the culture who are actually doing the right thing. Just to talk, that the kind of talk that is about consciousness, is about upliftment, and it's about advancing the culture to a more enlightened space.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
And we're not
And
sitting here pointing fingers, because we've all had to evolve into ourselves, into our knowing, right? And I think that's what makes the conversation interesting, because we've all got a story
rich.
to share, and we're not pointing fingers. But I think it comes to a point when it's critical, and somebody has to call time on it, because it's critical, and we're at that critical point now, I think. In 2024, where we still see certain behaviors in the community, and who will take ownership. And we talked about music in specific. Sorry, I feel strongly about this subject,
No,
as
no,
you can
yeah,
tell.
you can
yeah,
tell.
yeah. But
Sorry, am
it's
I being? Do I sound really aggressive about it?
no.
Because
I
I
No,
think
just,
no.
it's you putting across what needs to be said, and I think
Yeah.
that it still needs to be said, and I will I'll bring it back, because I think there's the other side of
Yes.
what you're saying, which I think is really important. Because like any frequency, there's low vibration, there's high vibration, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And the higher vibration, albeit it has been somewhat compromised, I guess. Look at what Afrobeat has done for Africa.
Right,
Yes.
Like when you think of Afrobeat,
right.
and I recently came back from Ghana last month, and you will hear. I mean, there are very few degrading words in Afrobeat. it just isn't the way that that places on the continent. It's just not, you know, and just the difference in the way that they dress,
Right.
and you know, nothing's really revealed. And so I think even from that, Afrobeat has opened up. I mean, you know, it was my daughter's birthday a couple of weeks ago. My husband, myself, my son and my daughter went to this, you know, Nigerian like modern cuisine restaurant in London Bridge. You would not have had that
Right.
before.
Right before, yes.
Before, you know, and it was Fela. I mean, it was Fela Kuti
Fela
who
Kuti,
really
Afrobeat,
gave
yeah.
birth
Yes.
to Afrobeat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where it is now, like, you know, you have
The young
other artists, some incredible Caribbean artists that are doing, you know,
Mergers.
collaborating with other Afrobeat artists and bringing out some beautiful music too. And it just always gets to be, doesn't it, that balance of position
balance.
and crossing over that line. And, you know, you make a choice. You can stay in that place that we're talking about, or you can choose
that which is
you
enlightening.
can choose to be where the light
It's
where
the
the
light
where the light is. You
Yeah.
can choose to
Yeah.
follow that path a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think I respect Fela Kuti. When I listen to Fela Kuti's music, and I grew up on High Life, my
Yeah.
mum,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
she just and the music is so uplifting. And when I hear Fela Kuti, it reminds me of Nina Simone, because he puts me in a space. I'm in a trance. Like
Yeah.
they have created
Yes.
atmosphere with their
Yes.
voices,
Yes.
right? And we know that he was a political figure that cost him his life.
It
and
did.
Cost him his life, his position cost him his life. There's a reason why Fela Kuti would perform without shirt and in his briefs, because he
Right.
wanted to disconnect from Western colonialism, right?
In
Right.
his shrine.
In his shrine. And there's
yes.
lots about him that we need to study. And so for me, reggae music produced, I think this kind of Africa was always
Yes.
bigged up in reggae music.
Always.
Always.
And
Yeah.
I saw some footage of Burning Spear in Kenya.
Incredible artist.
I have never seen so many black people, I mean black people in terms of their skin color in one space. When there was this, they came from all over. Some came on foot across the borders on to pay homage to Burning Spear. I think this was in the 80s.
Yeah.
And obviously Burning Spear is very alive. But when you think about what reggae has given to the world in terms of bigging up Africa,
Yeah.
why have we then taken the offsets of that music and created what exists now in the form of slackness dancehall? And
Because we
why?
have got to not disconnect any of this from
The trauma.
capitalism. And no, not trauma. The trauma is definitely there. If the trauma wasn't there, then you know they wouldn't be performing the kind of music, if you will. But the driver of this music is capitalism. It's about the money, and it's about the producers and their connection to this capitalist entity called the United States of America, right? Which is just beginning to become familiar with reggae music, okay? And getting a record deal. So you have to link this to that wider monster, capitalism. It's an important piece of it, because at the end of the day, until such time as those artists gain a level of consciousness and understand that what they're doing is destructive to not just themselves, but to their culture and to generations following them, they'll just continue doing it if in fact the money keeps flowing. Because that's the thing that degrades absolutely every aspect of human life.
That's
right?
the catalyst.
That's
Yeah.
it, right? Because people believe that money is all there is, but in fact, it's not. You can absolutely lose your soul behind believing that you should be chasing money. Okay. And that happened to many, and it continues to happen. And now within the reggae industry, a certain part of the reggae industry, certainly these young folks, I don't listen to the music, so I can't, you know what I'm saying? I don't allow
Sure.
myself to be abused with those lyrics and so on.
Yes.
Because to me, it's abuse. Just like I look at dance, is it dancehall where they wear the pink wigs and the green wigs and they flip
Dancehall.
them?
It's not
their
reggae, it's
bodies
dancehall.
up,
That's
right,
these
the
lyrics are
dance
coming
hall where
through.
they
Yeah.
flip their bodies upside down and
Yeah, and dance
the,
on
the,
their
the-
heads and break their necks.
yes,
Yeah.
and that I don't look at that. But it's there. But it is not where we go in terms of talking about our healing process, our
Yes.
enlightenment process,
Mm-hmm.
our reclaiming of our history and ourselves, and our coming together as a collective and knowing when I see you, I understand Ubuntu, right? When I see
Yes.
other
Yes.
Black people, I
Ubuntu.
understand Ubuntu. I know what that's about. I understand why it is that we're connected. I respect you and expect respect back from you. I see you have a dignity that you demonstrate, and I would like to demonstrate the same. Now, this is something that we have to be working on constantly, all the time, all day long, all the time. The only way to expose a dirty glass is to set a clean one next to it, right? So in this instance, we have, yes, those dancehall or whatever the genre is called right now, set against the explosion of Afro beats and what that's about, and
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
opening up of the continent to the world, if you will, and to the Black world, let's say. Definitely that is happening, and others will follow to the whole world because we
Mm-hmm.
are the trendsetters. We're the trendsetters.
Yeah.
We're the ones
Yeah.
with the dynamism. We're the ones from whom culture is stolen all
Yes.
day
Musically
long,
always has been. Yeah.
all day long. And so we just keep it moving because we're that dynamic and that creative. you know so those of us who are in the space to do work, to reclaim ourselves and reclaim our history and our culture, we have to do the work. You can't sleep. There's no
Mm-hmm.
rest for the wicked, as they say. So you cannot sleep. you know the work has always got to be done, any space you find yourself in. So whether you're in the fashion industry, the education industry, the medical industry, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All of the areas where we're active, political industry. So even if you're in the political space, you have to be true to what it is that you're doing. Gone are the days when our people, certainly in this country and in England, would say what needs to be said in order to be politically accepted.
Yeah.
Gone are
So,
those days.
days, yeah. So bringing this
Mm.
back to the man, because I think
Yes.
we
Yeah.
got, and I think it was all relatable, but I know that I feel very strongly about music, our
Yes.
music, very strongly about the influence of our music on our own psychology and others, and who owns our music
Right.
and who we
Yeah.
produce our music for. So I really feel strongly about this. And I also feel very strongly about the behavior of our men, not saying that it's entirely their fault,
Sure.
but not taking ownership of these
Yes.
types of destructive behaviors. Um,
Yeah.
and we are here as matriarchs to say that we love our men, and love is the highest vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Because
It
you're
is.
my father, you're my brother, you're
Mm-hmm.
my son,
Uncle, you're
you're
my
my
You're my
cousin.
grandson,
Right?
yeah,
grandson.
you're
Yeah.
my husband. So why would I not love you? Why would we not love you to the point that we want to speak about these things openly so
Yeah.
we can create a community to share information? And I just wanted to read this response from a UK man that says about the first episode: brilliantly communicated story. That's what I need help with. As much as I am a bull, I also need guidance. So he says, as much as I am a go getter,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's at the top of my game, I also need guidance and a steering hand. I guess that's my own trauma holding me back in that way. It's a weird contradiction I struggle with daily. And I really respect the fact that men
Yeah.
are now opening up in a safe space. I met a
Yeah.
group of men the other day, and they have a walk and talk group. So it's men coming together
Mm-hmm.
and talking in theme,
Yeah.
out in the
Mm-hmm.
nature,
Mm.
about the things that are important to them. And
Yeah.
we don't need to be there.
No, no, no.
No, but
Mm-mm.
we feel that it's important for us to start to encourage our men to contact
Yeah.
Abby Osho
Yeah. Yeah.
and find that safe space to start to talk so we can heal together. And so, as we have a couple of minutes left, I'm going to ask you to round up. What would we like to see from our men as we go forward to encourage them to come into the embrace of healing?
Yeah. And thank you, Carol. One of the things that one of the reasons why I created the online Healing Heart Circle space for brothers and sisters was, whilst a lot of my work has been with women, when it came to this, we are all on our healing journey. And the more I can encourage and cultivate circles, space online from wherever you are across the world that encourages you to come with your griot storytelling voice, your truth, encouraging your truth, because it's from that place when you can start to speak, a bit like the UK man was saying there, that you can that you start to really understand the power, and it's not the bullish power, it's the internal power that you have spiritually, ancestrally, that runs through your DNA, that we all need to hear from and about. And I just think that wherever you are on your journey, music, writing, meditation, prayer, whatever speaks to you, allow yourself to speak back to you and just feel into who you're becoming. That's a start. And all you can do is become you moment by moment by moment.
Thank you.
That's what I'd like to
Professor,
say.
thank you. We've
She's
lost
on
you.
mute.
We've lost you.
Have you muted yourself?
I could not agree more. And as I've said, I'd like to recommend some books and some.
Yes.
Certainly, I'd show you. This is. I don't know if you can see this.
It's a little bit out of focus. So if you can bring it closer.
It's out of focus.
Yes, we can't see. What's the name of the
Can you
title?
say the name of it?
Black Power. Can you
Black
just tell us what it's
Power
called?
by Amos Wilson. Black Power by Amos Wilson. That speaks to history, culture, healing, economics, geography, the whole 9 yards. It is a treatise that should be in everybody's library. Another book by Dr. Wilson that I would like to recommend is called The Falsification of African Consciousness. The Falsification of African Consciousness. Another one is by Dr.
Oh, wow.
Francis
The ISIS
Press
Papers.
Welsing, the ISIS Papers. Another one is The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Melanoma Somé. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And Yurugu, you can't see it. I don't know why this thing is out of focus. By Marimba Ani, Dr. Marimba Ani. This is a book produced over a 21-year longitudinal study that she conducted in Ghana and West Africa. And it's an academic tome, but it's useful. If you're going to get information, get real information, get information that is substantive and that has credibility. And also the works of Philip Shock Matthews.
Yeah, Rev Shock.
Yes, Rev Shock, his works. And also Dr. Joy DeGure, her works, the psychosis, the post-traumatic slave syndrome. And there are a slew others, but obviously Dr. Clark, Dr. Henry Clark, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, we have scholars beyond what we can think about and talk about that are now here and available to us. Once you begin to plug into one of these people, you will get the link to all of the other people. We also now have YouTube, which is phenomenal. You can go on YouTube and do good research. You don't have to be stuck in the valleys of dry bones. There's good research there that you can certainly find. And so for anybody who is on a journey or who is feeling a state of disequilibrium in their soul, in their vibrations, in their heart, just go and do some research and begin to read. And as Abby just said, write. Begin to write. Just write. Doesn't matter how it comes out, just get it out. But the work has got to be done. And we have to not just begin it, but we have to continue it and continue it and continue it. It's a lifelong work. So
thank you.
Thank you, CJ, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just wanted to say very quickly that as we round up about the work and the book that you showed, the first book, Black Power. And I just wanted to, because we have an international audience, because if I saw somebody holding up a book that had white power on it, I know that I would be offended. And so most people would be. So we want to put this this work and the term Black Power into context, because it has not been a level playing field, and our power structures has been eroded under a ideology called white supremacy, where the importance and the preference for one race has been elevated at the degradation of another.
So I
So
can give you the subtext. The
in the
subtext of the
subtext
book
of,
is a
yes,
moral, political, and economic imperative
Yeah.
for the 21st century.
thank you. And on that note, we've put it into context. And I want to say thank you both for this very inspiring conversation. And please share this podcast when you get it with everybody that you think is on that journey, or with anyone or everyone. So thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Professor Femi, starting with you, where can we find more about you?
Well, I have a phone number that I'm quite happy to share with people.
We can share that. We can share that
We can share that
on
right
screen.
on screen. And I have an email address that can be shared on screen.
Yes, we'll do that.
So those two things will work. Email is preferable because that allows you to write.
Yeah, email.
To write.
And writing is cathartic.
Yes, it is. So certainly that can happen. And following
Thank
the
you.
email, I'm quite happy to speak with anybody.
Thank you. And over to you, Abby.
So the
Tell
other
us about your healing circles and when you're having them. Yeah.
So the healing circles, it's a membership program where I come on once a month for an hour, and I talk about healing at the beginning, and then it's just open space for you to bring what story's coming up for you right now, and we work from that premise. There's no goal, there's no outcome. It's for you to bring self, all of self in your fullness. And so I love doing that. I also have a retreat coming up in Turkey, which is a sister retreat, the Healing Hearts Circle Retreat, from the 25th of June to the 29th. And it's in an area called Izmir, Ayvalık in Turkey, which is the foundation for the Afro-Turks. Yeah. So when the Afro-Turks came down through the Ottoman Empire from Tanzania all the way down through to Greece and went over to Turkey, these very dark-skinned black people who nobody actually believes in Turkey are Turkish were born and bred there, but they didn't know their roots. And so I met with them. I won't go into it, but I met with them last year. And I'm going to be doing a retreat in a wonderful place, and they're going to spend some time with us. And it's a healing retreat. And then I have my big retreat, which is another Healing Heart Circle retreat in Ghana in November. And so anybody that would...
Of this year or next year?
This year, November the 11th to the 21st. And that will be in Ghana,
When are you going to
3
Turkey?
different areas.
When are you doing Turkey?
Turkey is the 25th to the 29th of June this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
We'll get this information out with the podcast. So thank you very much.
And my website.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Greetings, family. Abby Osho here. I trust you are well and blessed. I'm inviting you to join me for my upcoming Healing Hearts online circle membership. It's monthly and it's open to all of our community, the Black and Brown sisters across the world. And so whilst it's in GMT time, you can join anywhere in the world. And it's a space where we get to come together to share our stories. And remember that we are the griots, we are the storytellers. I believe that this is in our DNA, but when we come together and share from our heart, it's a whole new experience, a place where we get to be heard, held and healed. It's extremely powerful, and I would so love for you to be there with me. The second offering that I have is my upcoming Healing Heart Circle retreat, which is a sister retreat. A small intimate group of us will be in Turkey, in Ayvalık, which is actually part of Izmir and is the land of the Afro-Turks. They have an extremely interesting story. So we will get to meet them. What we'll really get to do is we'll get to do the deeper work. We look at you know, who we're becoming. We get to look at healing our wounds. We get to release those old unhelpful stories that we know are no longer serving us, so that we can truly step into who we are becoming. It's going to be a powerful retreat, and I would love for you to join me if you're feeling called. This is specifically for women that are in midlife. So please, if this is of interest to you, drop me a message. All the links will be below. I'll be more than happy to have a call with you. And yeah, let's see if we can make this happen. I am always celebrating the light that shines within you. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.